So I will start the presentation. Thank you for the invitation for our talk here today. It's very exciting. We are talking about developing tools for the synthesis of non-interventional research as part of our project called Non-Interventional, Reproducible and Open Systematic Reviews, or NIRO in short. I'm Marta Torpor, and Jade is the co-lead of the project. And we have taken on this big thing to try and improve the synthesis of non-interventional research. So we are a team of researchers who have come from different places and kind of collected a group over time with a cross-disciplinary focus. So we have psychologists, neuroscientists, ecologists, research librarians. We are at all career levels, so starting from master's level up, and we are spread across several countries and continents as well. So just a quick background to those who are not familiar with systematic reviews. Systematic reviews are a method whereby results from previous studies are reviewed and synthesized in a rigorous way that is less prone to bias than just traditional kind of free-falling narrative review of the literature. Therefore, it makes it more likely to find the true effect of the reviewed literature in general, the true effect size, for instance, or the direction of the investigated effects. They generally include a narrative synthesis, which is systematized and can be enriched by statistical analyses, which then makes it a meta-analysis. So thinking about how systematic reviews are relevant to the reproducibility crisis and the reproducibility revolution, since we are putting so much effort into improving the design of the studies and making sure that we are producing research that is very rigorous and overall improving the science that is being produced at the moment, this approach needs to be applied to reviewing previous literature as well to make sure that the basis on which we build our future projects is solid and is not biased. So traditionally, systematic reviews have been used a lot over the years in interventional research. So, for example, clinical, educational, or health studies. But we should really start embarking on systematic reviews before taking on new projects to then systematically review our literature. And this will help with understanding the breadth of the available literature, tackle our own biases and understand the biases within that literature. And also to assess the quality of the studies that are present in the literature with regards to high and low quality, and then weigh those results. So those are generally advantages in the general scope for improving rigor and research, but there are also advantages that you can gain for yourself. So things like improving your skills and methodology awareness of gaps and issues and biases within the field, and things like new collaborations and publications from systematic reviews. So I hope that this convinces you that we need to start doing systematic reviews more often, and perhaps you feel like, yeah, great idea, let's do it. But as soon as you decide to do it, you then realize that there are problems, and pretty much straight away you face a barrier, which is the fact that contrary to the traditional route where you want to evaluate the interventions, in this situation, you have lots of different guidelines and tools that suggest to you what are the steps to follow to make sure that your systematic review is systematic, rigorous, and of high standard. When you try to look for non-interventional guidelines, which would then be specific for your aims, the design of the research that you're reviewing, and the outcomes that you're interested in, you find that there is a lack of guidance, lack of tools, lack of checklists, whatever you're looking for, it's not there. And so what generally researchers do is that they take the tools that are available for interventional research, make their own adaptations to suit the research questions, and this gives space for the introduction of new biases and makes the process less systematic, and consequently the systematic reviews that are produced for non-interventional research are then not really comparable.
So as part of the NIRO collaboration, we've been working on several new resources to try and tackle this issue. So our first main output that we've been working on is a set of guidelines for people that want to do systematic reviews of research that is a bit different to the sort of clinical trial-based research. So we've developed a two-part tool. Part A helps to assist with writing a protocol and pre-registering it. So the key differences in the NIRO guidelines versus the existing ones, there are two main ones. One is just the type of research that you're synthesizing, and the second one is the emphasis that we've put on transparency, openness. So we don't have time to go into detail of exactly how we developed these, but briefly, we took the gold standard guidelines that already exist. So for example, PRISMA is probably the most famous one. We made an item bank containing all of the items from these tools, and then we grouped them into themes, and we've taken the best of what already exists, adapted it where they were less appropriate. So for example, there's less emphasis on things like randomization, less on interventions, less on specifically looking at patient groups. And we've added in extra things that are more about transparency. So part A sets you up to be able to conduct a review, and it also sets you up to make sure that when you've finished your review, you're already in a position where you have supplementary materials ready, you're ready to share the decision-making process as you go. So once you've done part A, pre-registered it, and you're ready to get on to the review itself, we have part B, which is a set of guidelines that helps you to write the report itself. So again, we're focusing on transparency particularly. It includes all of the things that you need in order to systematically report everything that you did clearly. It conforms to a lot of the current standardization. For example, in PRISMA, we've taken a lot of inspiration from these guidelines, but just made them more appropriate for our purposes. So version 0.1 of the NIRO guidelines is on the OSF already. There's a link at the top of the screen. One thing that we sort of wanted to do with these guidelines is we wanted to balance standardization and rigor with staying up to date. So we're releasing it in versions so that it basically stays standardized. We don't want to change it too much, but it also doesn't become out of date too quickly, because the research culture is changing very quickly, and we want these guidelines to stay relevant. So version 1 will hopefully be ready by the end of 2020. We'll release that with a preprint, and the new set of guidelines will be updated with feedback we've received from people that are already using version 0.1. So at the moment, we've had quite a lot of good feedback. We found that NIRO is really useful, particularly for early career researchers, especially people that are doing systematic reviews as part of their master's project or their PhDs, especially if their research has had to change due to COVID. More people are doing systematic reviews, so the guidelines are already in use, and it's also filling a gap that research librarians have been aware of for a number of years. So systematic reviews are becoming more common outside of interventional research. We're also developing some additional resources. We kind of describe these as plugins, so they can be used alongside the main NIRO guidelines, but they also stand alone as separate outputs as well. So the first thing we're developing is a quality assessment risk of bias tool that will help with the critical appraisal of the individual studies that will be included in a review. So again, quality assessment tools do exist, but often the focus is on things like randomization, blinding, and they don't always focus on other methodological aspects that may be important when assessing quality. So it's important when you're doing a synthesis to think about the quality of the studies you're including. You don't want to give equal weight to evidence from a particularly low quality study versus a high quality study. So we want to take we want to kind of develop these in context of everything that we've learned over the last decade or so in the context of the reproducibility revolution, and develop a new tool where we can properly assess previous research in the context of everything that we know now and outside of clinical trials. Finally, we have a third resource that we're developing. So this one is led by two of the research librarians that are involved in the collaboration. They are developing a comprehensive guide to developing a search strategy. So the search strategy is one of the first things that you need to do in the systematic review pipeline. If you get it wrong, it has a knock-on effect for the rest of the process. So this is the point at which you're deciding how you're going to search databases. It basically says how wide are you casting your net before you filter down to those studies that you'll be including in your final synthesis. So Megan and Yannicka are basically working on a very comprehensive guide to make sure that this is done correctly. So that was very much a whistle-stop tour of what we're trying to do with the NIRO collaboration, some of the outputs that we're working on. So finally, just want to thank some of our collaborators who have helped to inform and shape the project over the last year and a half or so. Marta and I are only a small proportion of the effort that goes into the project. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you for listening.